Hey everybody, video here for you today. We are going to tack another site onto my Ancient America series. First of all, I'd like to say thanks for all the people who checked out Steve's videos, the ruins in Quebec. I know we went from 68 subs to I think over 500, so that's really cool. But I was trying to decide the next site I was going to talk about. We are going to go down to Dickson Mounds. This is near the Illinois River. If we back out here, there is one site just south of it. I will show you a pic of that here in a sec. But this is about 20 miles away from the Ellisville Mounds that I talked about in my last video. I think we have a big mystery in that little town. But let's talk today about the Dickson Mounds. There was over 3,000 burials found here, estimated. And all these sites are treated differently, and this is no different. But this here, let's just take a look and do a little reading. Here is the museum marker, the sign. That's a pretty cool design right there. It says, Dickson Mounds sits atop a picturesque bluff overlooking the Illinois River, just as it did back in 800 of the current era. It was occupied until the mid-14th century. I will be playing just a short clip from a video here from the Mound Site Museum. But it says, the remains of Dickson Mounds were discovered in 1927 by landowner Don Dickson, who excavated part of the mound, removing the dirt but leaving the bones in the earth. He erected a tent over the site and eventually built a structure to protect the remains from the elements. In 1972, the state of Illinois built a museum on the location which held the 237 skeletons Dickson originally unearthed. And what he did is he just removed the earth, the dirt, and left the artifacts and the skeletons exactly where they left. So this was an advantage for later archaeologists. It says the state hoped to increase public awareness about Native American culture and the tribes that roamed the river valley. Originally located on the border of upper and middle Mississippian culture, Dickson Mounds reveals the emerging and developing phases of these Native Americans. Now these sites were all treated differently in different parts of the United States, but this is certainly unique. It says several separate burial sites comprise the complex, including 10 burial mounds, at least 2 cemeteries, and a platform mound similar to a truncated pyramid. What intrigued archaeologists is the fact that the burials have been organized by hierarchy. These semi-nomadic societies indicated deceased higher class status by burying tools, ornaments, and imported minerals like copper with the body. Those of the lesser class were buried with beads, pottery, and eating utensils. Here is a website I will leave below, but an artifact with the familiar cross-type design found in a lot of early cultures. Here is a look at the whole site inside the museum here on the grounds. Looks like some copper artifacts here of some sort. And this is the Ogden Fetty site, a nondescript mound site just south of the Dickson Mounds here in Fulton County. Once again, this is only about 20 miles from Ellisville and that mystery that I opened up in my last video. But this, like many ancient mound builder sites, it says this, at Dickson Mounds, history is not measured in generations, not even in centuries, but in millennia. The museum's location near the confluence of the Illinois and Spoon Rivers, and that's a river that the Ellisville Mound site is on, has witnessed more than 10,000 years of human occupation, and that's just the way it appears with a lot of these mound builder sites. Even the mound builders were just building on sites that have been occupied all the way up until the end of the last ice age. Now, Mr. Dickson, when he discovered the site 93 years ago, he left all the bodies where they lay, the artifacts where they lay, and took great notes. This really helped later archaeologists, but there was some protest of just viewing these bodies where they lay in this museum. This part of it, at least, was closed, I believe, in 1992. But here is just a short video clip from the State Museum at Dickson Mounds, and I will leave the link to the full video below. Here you go.
Fulton County, Illinois is well known for having the greatest concentration of prehistoric archaeological sites in Illinois. Just about everyone in Fulton County has an artifact collection of some sort, and Alan Harn was no different.
After I moved into town, I met an individual living 2 blocks away who was also interested in archaeology. And we spent days and hours riding our bicycles over the countryside collecting artifacts. we would bring them here to the museum. And now, looking back, bothering the Dicksons because they spent hours patiently talking to us about our finds, what they meant, and encouraging us then to keep records of everything that we found.
The Dicksons weren't professional archaeologists, but they did something unique. As they excavated the burial site, they removed the dirt, but left the bones and artifacts in place. This provides tremendous advantages for archaeologists who do not have to rely on a previous researcher's notes. The site could then be re-examined and findings checked and double-checked.
We are fortunate that the Dicksons were not professional archaeologists, for at the time they were conducting their preservation work here in the 1920s, the primary focus of many institutions and museums was still on the mass accumulation of objects for their exhibits and their collections, generally with little regard for recording meaningful information about what those artifacts might have told us about the people and the cultures they represented. What the Dicksons did after local people expressed an interest in their work here, Dr. Dickson gave up his practice and first put a tent over his excavation, later temporary buildings, and by the end of the first year, by charging a small admission, he had enough money to build his museum that lasted here until 1972. Dr. Dickson's partial excavation of Mound 10, which he left in place for public viewing, would represent a radical departure from the past. The compelling story of man this excavation presented to the public would introduce them to Native Americans in a humanistic manner never quite achieved by the academic community.
But the story of the Dickson Mound is pretty unique in the Ancient America series here. Here's a pot with some designs on it. Mr. Dickson seemed to raise interest of this ancient lost culture. Here you can see cars, old cars at the museum site back about 70 years ago. It says in 1965 the site was transferred to the Illinois State Museum, and in 1972 the present building was open to the public. But here is a press conference about 50 years ago, and states adopted policies prohibiting the display of remains, and that probably is an ongoing controversy everywhere at ancient mound builder sites. Here's the way the place looks today. But it said in 1927 Mr. Dickson dug into the large platform, truncated pyramid-type mound, and I'm just not sure if this sits on the remains of that. That is one thing I'm not sure of, but I think that'll wrap it up right there. That is a look at the Dickson Mounds. We have a lot of sites still to go on my Ancient America series, but just doing these one at a time, week by week. We are getting somewhere. Some of these sites I have talked about. Some of these are on my list to do. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very nice day.